This video is brought to you by patreon.com/worsttake. Get access to exclusive live streams and Discord servers, on-screen shoutouts, and early access to some videos when you join now. Help make sure that we can continue to make content like this by supporting the Patreon. Links are in the description down below. That's the thing about Bryce Young, is the tape is incredible. Like,
yeah,
the mixtapes are incredible for Bryce Young. like
the only negative about him that you really could have is just how he's built, like how he's built physically. Like that's it. It was none of the complaints about Bryce were as a football player or as a quarterback. That's that you don't. I've only heard people say like glowing things about what he does.
No, he might be one of the best college quarterbacks. He might be the best college quarterback I've ever seen in my life. Like, I've never seen anybody better than him at the college level.
Those are the questions that have been asked ad nauseum, and you've been part of those programs, whether you wanted to or not. But what intrigues you about next Thursday night?
Well, just to start with the, I guess, bulletin board #1 headline, nobody seems to know what order these quarterbacks are going in. I would say Bryce Young at 1 to the Panthers. It feels like that's beginning to settle. But after that, nobody knows what order the quarterback's in, and nobody knows what teams are actually taking quarterbacks, Paul, which is stunning because until a couple of weeks ago, it seemed locked in that Houston was going to take one of the next 3 quarterbacks, the top prospects, with their 2nd overall pick. And increasingly, it sounds like they're going to take.
All right, Kobe, you work in media, so I got to ask y'all this question. Why do ESPN be having people out there without DSLRs or something like that? Like, they got Mina Kimes out there doing her lives for webcam.
Look, man, some people just don't care. Like, it is what it is. Like, some people just like, you know what? It don't matter. We're going to do what we're going to do. It don't matter.
It just be funny. I'll be like watching these dudes do ESPN for their house. I'm like, yo, YouTubers have better work from home setups to do. Like, they had Kenny kicking the first quarter on First Take. And I was like, yo, his set blowing away what they usually be having back there. Like, that's crazy. You know what I mean?
Hey, some people care more than others. It is what it is. I'm
like, man, all you gotta do is buy a cam link. That's all they gotta do is buy a cam link and a Sony 64A, A64. That's all. That's all. You know what I mean? It is set up. Some nice lights, and then boom. But I thought they was only doing that during the pandemic, man. It's been like 3 years, dog. They still doing it like this. Like,
hey, listen, what you gotta follow, you gotta follow it. It don't matter.
I guess. You know what I mean? I'm wasting all this money. I'm wasting all this money. I am wasting so much money trying to make this look nice for y'all.
Going to take Will Anderson out of Alabama, edge rusher. So if that happens, it shakes up all of the mocks, all of the boards, and things will be pretty chaotic.
I mean, you've been a reporter and a great reporter, and I hear the most knowledgeable reporters in the game talking about these things every day, and I still don't really understand where the real information is coming from, because you know these clubs are deflecting. How do we know what is going on in?
I like how this show is so unapologetically only about the SEC. He's like, yo, we don't have the top 4 quarterbacks projected. We have the top 4 SEC quarterbacks.
I want to give Paul Feinbaum his flowers real quick. I appreciate a man who is honest about his agenda. I love a man who is just brutally honest about what he's standing for. This is about the SEC.
He's like, if it ain't in the SEC, it don't matter.
I appreciate that. I appreciate it.
My man, that's crazy.
What we're being told.
What's actually going to happen? That's a great question, because often we don't, and you see surprises on draft day. I think the San Francisco 49ers taking Trey Lance at pick 3. Nobody knew what was going to happen. They had a lot of there was a lot of rumors and reports connecting them to Mac Jones in that draft after they did the big trade up. So, until the last minute, it can be really hard to parse out fact from fiction. For me, I think, you start to know, I guess, there's things I kind of look at. I look at, okay, does it, for example, with the Texans thing, you're hearing it from Adam Schefter, you're hearing it from local reporters, you're hearing it from people who do mocks and pretty assiduously cover these things. You're seeing it in the betting markets, which has become actually a pretty good referendum on this stuff. And then you can never be definitive, but you kind of work from there just based on who you trust.
So, Mina, going back to that, because I mean, you want to believe Vegas knows something, and if you look at where Bryce Young was a month ago versus where he is today, what do you think started to happen that created this push that he is almost a fait accompli that he's going to Carolina?
It's a great question because coming into this process, Bryce Young was I think most people assumed he would go first overall. But then once Carolina traded up from 9 for that pick, the initial reporting was that it was either CJ Stroud or maybe Anthony Richardson, which was a little bit surprising, but made sense if you kind of followed the tea leaves or read the tea leaves and looked at the staff there with Frank Reich, the type of quarterbacks that he's liked, who's their head coach now. Josh McCown, who's their quarterbacks coach, had spoken positively about CJ Stroud on a podcast. Not that Josh McCown's influencing who they take, but I actually think the Panthers were pretty honest when they said, or when it was reported, that they knew they wanted to have their choice of quarterbacks rather than having absolute certainty about the quarterback. And from the outside, that can sound crazy. Like, why would you trade your future if you're not even sure who you're going to pick? But these teams use every day to talk to people, to watch tape. And then as you guys know, the more Bryce Young tape you watch, the more you tend to love Bryce Young.
That's the thing about Bryce Young is the tape is incredible. Like,
Yeah,
the mixtapes are incredible for Bryce Young. like
the only negative about him that you really could have is just how he's built. Like how he's built physically. Like that's it. There was none of the complaints about Bryce were as a football player or as a quarterback. That you don't. I've only heard people say like glowing things about what he does.
No, he might be one of the best college quarterback. He might be the best college quarterback I've ever seen in my life. Like I've never seen anybody better than him at the college level. And like I've seen Andrew Luck, all of this, where it's like if he needed to find somebody, he just found like it was. I remember every time Alabama looked like they were going to be upset and Bryce Young was out there. It was like, oh no, he about to make this drive, make it happen. Like he did not have the fortune of being on some of the better Alabama teams during the dynasty run. I think he is the last of that Alabama dynasty. And I think we're going to talk about them very differently post Bryce Young versus when they had Bryce Young, right? Like the Alabama dynasty from like 2010 to here is probably where it ends, right? And then after that, it's going to be a much different Alabama we talk about. And a lot of the only reason that they were hanging on to anything was they had Bryce Young. Like the tape is so hard. If the draft were in February, it would be so hard to talk yourself out of Bryce Young going on number 1 overall. Because when you watch that dude play football, you're like, maybe he'll be fine. Because maybe he's going to figure it out, because I've never seen anybody as good as him at college. But then when you get time to think and then you measure him and you realize he's 5'10" and he's not super athletic and he's kind of frail, and you think about Tua, who is bigger than him, but still the same issues apply. And it's just, we used to think about Joe Burrow and Tua the same, right? Like we used to think about them as the same in college, and Joe Burrow had more size. like completely different now, right? We don't think of them remotely the same. And this could be a thing with, if this is Bryce Young and CJ Stroud in a Joe Burrow Tua kind of situation, history tells you the bigger dude's probably going to be the dude who works out. But that Bryce Young tape, like you could watch the CJ Stroud tape and see reasons on why that might not be all him. You watch that Bryce Young tape and you see a man carrying the remains, the dead body of a former college football colossus on his back. It is one of the most incredible things to watch.
Yeah, so this is my whole thing about all the quarterbacks. And if you're picking based on who was the best player in college, it's Bryce Young. It's not close. And I like CJ. I like CJ a lot. If you're just talking about who was the best quarterback in college football when they were in college football, it is Bryce Young. There's no debates. There's nothing.
We
But
talk
so
about Bryce
much-
Young and we're like, yo, like, was he better than that 1 year of Cam? Like, that's the only year I could think that compares to some of the stuff that he's done at Alabama, right?
Yeah, he's
Where it's like
the truth, man. Like Bryce is
ultimate
the truth.
eye test dude when it comes to if you watch him, you go, that dude's really good, right? And he passes the eye test in his play. Where he doesn't pass the eye test is, ooh, that boy's small. I remember talking about it before everybody else caught up on it. Where I was like, whew, that's a small person. And the thing that makes me worried about his size too is like, Kobe, he been at Alabama. Like, if there's one place you're going to pick up weight, it's Alabama. You know what I mean? And he ain't picking up a pound. So, like, I don't think this is something he could just grow into.
Yeah, that's what worries you. That's what worries me. Is that I don't think he can get it. It's one thing to be small, but you have a frame that can maybe like put on weight and you can handle the weight. He ain't picking up no weight, dog. He not picking up no weight. And it's one thing to do that in college. It's a whole nother thing to be successful against NFL defensive linemen and NFL linebackers and NFL pass rushers. Hell, NFL safeties, dog. He gonna get hit by somebody and it might not go well because he can't put up no weight.
Because the real question with Bryce Young that we're asking is, can you be a great quarterback, or can your quarterback be the smallest person on the field?
And there have been some outliers that have worked and been very successful and won Super Bowl. Obviously, people say, but even like those examples, like they
weren't the smallest guy on the field though, right? Like they were at least 200 pounds. We're talking about a guy who's going to be smaller than the smallest safety or corner on the team. Like, say what you want about Drew Brees, he could shake off a DB if they came and tackled him, right? Or even Kyler Murray, he's big enough to shake off somebody like that and athletic enough to get rid of him. They're not smaller than those dudes. This is the first quarterback to where you're going to have to ask yourself, can you win with the quarterback who's legitimately the smallest guy on the field? Because that's Bryce Young.
180 pounds?
5'10", 185. There's nobody other than like somebody who occasionally turn kicks. Like, he's the same size as JoJo Natson. You know what I mean?
It's
small.
A concern. It's a concern. A legitimate, like, I'm worried about your health if you get hit by one of these dudes. So, like, Jordan, how big was Jordan Davis?
6'7".
6'6",
350.
350. He run like what, a 4.6 40?
He ran like 4.7. He could jump over Bryce Young.
That is the kind of dude he might get hit by. And I don't know how he gonna handle that.
Also, another thing to point out, when we talk about Bryce Young, whose play style do we say he's similar to, right? It's more like a Joe Burrow, Deshaun Watson style of playing, right? Kind of more on the Joe Burrow side than the Deshaun Watson side, right? And one of the things about the dudes who play like that, and you can look at Joe Burrow sack numbers and you can look at Deshaun Watson sack numbers. They're not very different. They hit. Because when your best skill is your ability to play out of structure, you're going to be out the pocket, but you're going to be trying to throw downfield, and you're going to get hit. And it's one thing to survive those hits in the SEC, where every once in a while it's an NFL player hitting you. It's another thing in the NFL to be getting them hits in the NFL, where every hit's an NFL player, even when it's not a big dude. Like them linebackers, right? And that's the big question with Bryce Young is, can you win as a quarterback can your quarterback be successful if he's the smallest guy on the field?